Hey everybody, welcome to the Willow Worlds podcast. This is the 2nd November installment, and we're in the same place with a different story, so let's get started. Willow Worlds at Muiredge Park as a story begins with the opening of Levenmouth Academy next door. The nature restoration stories at Bats Wood are a sort of Silmarillion to the Willow Worlds Hobbit. Fortunately, the nature restoration stories of Bats Wood are much easier to follow than the early mythology of Tolkien's Middle-earth, and I'm not just making it up, it's all true. In 2017, there were 3 grey blobs on the map, and nobody seemed to know what they were. They sat on the left side of the plans like abstract punctuation, waiting for meaning. The geographers thought they might be contour lines, 3 gentle mounds in the land, but there were no such bumps to be seen. It was the darkness on the edge of town, a place defined by a lack of interest. It was the place where the old school was buried. The new school wanted to sell it off, but they had failed due to the presence of bats discovered there. This green triangle of land belongs to the bats, therefore, so we call it Bats Wood. The 3 grey blobs of Bats Wood turned out to be clover planted as a first attempt to coax life from the ground. This wasn't soil, not in the usual sense. It was made-up land, the skeletal remains of earth, flipped inside out by years of bulldozering. The topsoil was long gone, and what was left had spent millennia entombed 7 metres underground. Nothing lives there except stone and memory. What we had wasn't land, but exposed underworld. Only the hardiest invaders, clover and a particularly tenacious grass, could cling to it. By June 2018, the blobs had begun to transform. The clover's nitrogen-fixing magic painted the land a vibrant green, quietly preparing the ground for an impressive plantation of 5,000 native trees. Each tree had a wooden stake and a green plastic tree guard. This added to the pupils' own tree planting efforts. Volunteers transplanted a line of trees to create paths through the clover. I remember Tanaka-san, a student from Japan, dressed in Harajuku chic, pink, wielding a spade heavier than he was. He likely doesn't know that his path is still there, now visible on Google Maps, and here on this Substack, of course. We were full of optimism then, convinced that paths would lead to community placemaking, and that clover could nurse our fledgling forest to life. With thousands of saplings protected by green plastic tree guards, we felt we had done our job, and all we had to do was colour in the map and let nature take its course. But in the real world, the disturbed, messy one, nature can't simply be summoned like a spirit with a bulldozer, a few thousand trees, and a bag of clover seeds. Nature can fail. By the 2nd year, the truth was undeniable. Over 90% of our trees were dead. We had given the ground a nitrogen fix, but the result was turbocharged weeds. 2-metre thistles and nettles, greedy for nitrogen, choked out our sapling trees. The clay soil dried into something resembling pottery in the summer, and generations of weeds pitted themselves against one generation of trees, and won. The plastic guards turned into silent grave markers for trees that hadn't taken root. We stumbled in other ways too. One well-meaning idea involved tractor tires, which we imagined as cheap and durable structures. But tires, we learned too late, are a fire hazard and a toxic leech on the land. Farmers were only too eager to offload them onto unwitting chumps like us, rather than pay for their disposal. Other early efforts, a low willow fence, a spiral of coloured willows, were equally short-lived, succumbing to poor soil, deer, and the unrelenting weeds. I even lost the photos, as if to spare us the memory of our failures. Yet these failures were teachers. They taught us to observe more closely and let go of human planning. Our efforts had been about imposing a vision, when we should have been feeding an emerging picture. The problem is that when we listen to what the land needs and what it rejects, the process takes more than years. It might take decades, an intergenerational period of time that humans find hard to think about. We have already seen this in our discussion of the shifting baselines effect. In the following years, we added and added, not really expecting to get finished, but just to see what happened. We dug damp ditches for diversity, we created wormeries, frog and toad abodes, and built bug hotels. We linked to China, to Ghana, to Tanzania, and even Eton College. We became beavers and made dams. We became John Muir. We became tadpoles. We became Greta, and we went to COP26. And then we became farmers. We tangled our ideas up. And finally, something really happened. The Fedge, a breakthrough. By 2022, our focus had shifted again to health and well-being, and we wanted to encourage people post-COVID to walk on our paths. We became artists and we planted willow, not as weak lines or fragile spirals this time, but as a strong, tall, living fedge, a fusion of fence and hedge. Using 3-metre branches of Salix viminalis, or basket willow, we created a curving structure lining Tanaka-san's path. This time we prepared the ground with organic matter and wood chip, and we planted with a grant from Creative Carbon Scotland. The intention was to make public artwork to encourage healthy outdoor walking. Against some predictions, it worked. The willow took root, defying the deer. Perhaps the deer found the fedge unnatural, even snake-like, and avoided it. Or perhaps the height discouraged them. But most likely, the strong structures offered a physical defence against overgrazing that we didn't expect. The breakthrough was subtle but profound. The fedge wasn't just a structure, it was an ecological revelation. We found deer damage, but the deer could not scratch away the bark around the whole trunk. So the willow survived. This banal-seeming fact, a scratched tree survives, a ringed tree dies, is life and death to a forest. The fedge, we realised, could do more than beautify paths. It could afford protection to new forests. The first fedge had been built with a good gardener's construction values. The stakes were a smooth, pale pine, and they didn't last long. After about 6 months, they were spotted as prime firewood and summarily stolen and burnt, as I'd feared. But living willow doesn't burn easily, and the willow had rooted well enough to remain despite the disappearance of the supporting stakes. We resolved to plant only living willow after that. Thin willow branches and thick willow stakes. We would just plant trees. What began as an art project grew to become a scientific hypothesis, i.e., fedge can be a barrier against roe deer. Instead of lines of willow, we began planting in shapes, bean-like, yin-yang-like, encircling spaces of life. Inside these living walls, saplings grew unmolested, nourished by mulch and organic matter. We buried dead wood for fungi to feast upon and left insects and frogs to flourish in the safety of the thickets. The Willow Worlds began to mimic something ancient, like the influence of wolves on a landscape. These thickets created places where deer didn't go, without excluding them entirely, like deer fences. We got the effects of a landscape of fear, but without the nightmare of wolves. Over time, these spaces became lusher, greener, and unmistakably alive. They were not just tree guards, but micro-habitats, breathing proof that restoration could be both functional and beautiful. We could make our tree planting plastic-free. The fedge was more than a barrier. It was a seed for reimagining restoration itself, something more holistic. So we called it Willow Worlds. The broader picture, November 2024. The Willow Worlds project is still evolving, but they've taught us something crucial. Restoration is not about control. It's about partnership. It's about finding harmony between what we want to create and what the land will allow. And it's about patience, a willingness to try, fail, and learn. These living structures have become more than art or science. They're places of refuge for saplings, frogs, and insects, from deer and from us. In a time when so much of the world feels beyond repair, Willow Worlds offers a glimpse of what's possible. These are small acts of hope, rooted in the belief that we can find better ways to coexist with wildlife. The idea for Willow Worlds emerged in Batswood, but the research project began officially this month. The research into willow structures that I'm writing about has been joined by other projects getting in on the action. I can't do this alone, of course, so Willow Worlds has partners as well as volunteers. Clear, Buckhaven and Methil have great resources, and they want to research different tree planting methods inside the Willow Worlds. A student at Stirling University wants to study some microbiology in soil or something next to the planted trees. So we have not one, but 3 research strands happening at the same time. I like this. The original plan for the Willow Worlds was a 6 kidney bean shaped affair that formed an almost disorienting artistic mosaic of Willow Worlds. I liked the idea of being able to move right through, that the worlds would become porous, gently guiding people and other wildlife through. I thought that the artistic quality of the original design might be important. I also wondered whether it was the parallel lines of the fedge that kept the deer at bay. I've got a picture here on the Substack. However, the tree planters, they want circles because they want to rival the wee forest circle nearby. They want petri dish circles for experimental tree planting. At first I was against it. I mean, who wants to live next to a petri dish? But in the end, I've chosen to give up on my bean shapes here. The bean shapes of Batswood, the Willow Worlds there, however, already spreading slowly across the site, so it's not really a sacrifice. I've still got my beans, and now we've got circles too, so it's not really a sacrifice, it's just a strategy adjustment to accommodate research partners. Besides, the tree planters at Clear have come up with the promise of 80 tonnes of topsoil from a site in Kennoway, and this will give the Willow Worlds a lift, quite literally a lift, which will bury the nasty grass of Muiredge Park. Now, 3 Willow Worlds as circular mounds, 14 metres across, rise like little hill forests in my mind's eye, and I'm happy for the rest of the day. In Batswood, we had dug ditches by hand to create optimal soil for the easy planting of the willow rods. This was important because when we plant, we want to plant fast and easy. We want the roots to grow fast and strong for survival in a hostile environment. We'll use a mechanical digger for the 90 metres of ditches required. This isn't laziness, it's self-care. Filling 90 metres of ditches with broken soil, manure and mulch will be enough work for the volunteers. Some people from the permaculture community might wonder if we couldn't use a no-dig method to plant the willow fedge. The idea that digging harms the soil is keenly felt. Besides, after a day or two of digging, most people are ready to stop. In the chaos of this planning month, my hankering for no-dig methods has also fallen victim to the forces of compromise and the fear of failure. No-dig as a principle has a place in my heart, but for these 3 circles in this rock and rubble soil, the mechanical digger will make planting quick and easy. We're digging for victory. Sorry, worms. I'll make it up to you. I mean the worms. We're incorporating no-dig techniques in batswood, layering compost and mulch to build soil fertility without disturbing the earth below. Watch this space as we continue experimenting with these methods, reminding us that nature restoration is a journey of flexibility, patience and care. Conclusion. So I hope you can see where we're coming from. We have, over the last few months, really done the history and context, maybe too much. But we should be able to move into a more dynamic vlogging mode for December's post. We are going to have to find things to talk about, of course, while we watch the trees grow. But hopefully we can do more with film than philosophy. Our next post will be around in the new year. So have a good one when it comes. Take care till then.